Hello, New York listeners. Y'all missing Cuomo yet?
What's going on, everybody?
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's another week. Got to get down to business with you, talk about some stuff like we normally do. And I thought since we decided to postpone a little bit of a conversation, we can touch it briefly because I really don't want to talk about firings all episode. But I guess New York did start their firings and suspension without pay for people who are not vaccinated in the medical field, except for anyone that may be involved in some major surgeries coming up because they're short staffed. So there are some exceptions made still for certain staff members to not get fired. So I guess if they have some major surgeries coming up, they're allowed to stay. And then also people who have some religious beliefs that can't get vaccinated because of their religion, because clearly whoever they bow to, that God is going to save them from getting the virus. So they're allowing those people not to get vaccinated and continue their employment.
See, at that point, I don't know why anybody who hasn't gotten vaccinated wouldn't just claim that they were a member of a certain religion and get the exemption. Then, and the other thing that bothers me is that when it comes to these vaccines and everything, the part of the problem that part of the reason they want everybody to get vaccinated is that they're afraid the hospitals are going to get overrun with sickness if an epidemic breaks out again. And it's like, well, so what do you want? Do you want people to work at the hospitals or do you not? I mean, like, I don't know. You could still spread the virus with the vaccine. I feel like everybody's forgetting that. And I say this as a vaccinated person, right? It lowers your chances of spreading it, I guess. And it lowers the symptoms of it, but I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I have to say I'm going on record as being officially not supporting what's happening here in New York right now.
I guess where we left off about the firing piece, where I said that the government should basically not allow people to fire people if they choose not to get vaccinated. Reply came from you basically saying that, so you'll allow the government to get involved if it's the opposite. And I say that because there are so many rules in there already that the government did already intervene, where if a woman has a child, you can't fire her for that, even though if she does have that child, she's going to be out of work for X amount of time. So there is a mandate already that you can't fire anyone for having a child. So there's already mandates there allowing the government to say you can't fire people for certain things. So bearing a child is one. I don't believe you're allowed to fire someone if they got an abortion, right? So what about all of the companies that are like Chick-fil-A? If Chick-fil-A fired someone for getting an abortion, do you realize there'll be a lawsuit pretty much immediately?
Sure.
If somebody opts not to get vaccinated and they get fired, I feel like the government should not allow that to happen. And what this is going to turn into is a class action suit against all of these hospitals. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kamala Harris's fucking husband that starts the class action suit against all of the hospitals who decided to let people go or fire them or suspend them without pay for not getting vaccinated. It's going to happen. There is a chain of lawsuits. Just they're prepping for them already. There is going to be so many lawsuits in the next 5 years that you and I will probably get money for some odd reason.
I could be on board with that. But to counter your point, right? If you allow the government to have a say one way or the other, then this is the opposite extreme of that, where the government will come in and say, if you're all right with the government saying, you can't, telling these businesses you can't fire people over COVID, then by that logic, you're also okay with them coming in and saying, the vaccine rather, not COVID. But, if you're all right with the government saying you can't fire somebody because they haven't had the vaccine, then you're okay with the government coming in and saying, all right, you have to fire all these people who don't have the vaccine.
Are all the congressmen, governors, all of like anybody that has a political paycheck, are they mandated to get the vaccine?
Yes.
So everyone in Congress is mandated, Republican, Democrat, everyone. They have to get it. And if they don't, what happens?
I don't know. Because I don't think there's anybody in Congress that has opted to not get it.
So everyone got it. Everyone.
I thought so. Actually, now that you say that, are there any anti-vax senators? 3 GOP senators who refused to get it. All right, but what about Congress people?
All the Democrats have, obviously. But I guess some of the Republicans are doing it now too. But I don't think it's all of them. But I wonder
a lot of them have. Donald Trump did, and that's what I think is most important. A lot of the people who are against getting the vaccine are people who, were there in support of January 6th, whether they were there present physically at the White House or just, supporting it in spirit. A lot of those people are also not getting the vaccine. And Trump has gone out in rallies and said, hey, so this vaccine, though, it's pretty cool, right? And he gets booed.
I mean, my other counter to it all is having people who aren't vaccinated, since it isn't that many. We call it 16%. I think the numbers have been over 80% of medical workers have been vaccinated. So it's a small 20% that haven't. And I thought if we got a certain number of people vaccinated, then it kind of works out anyway, in a sense. If there's 20% that aren't vaccinated, you can clearly keep track of that 20%. Maybe have them wear a wristband of some sort. And if there is someone that goes into the emergency room or someone that goes into the hospital or any of the medical facilities, if they opt not to be treated with someone that's not vaccinated, that's on them to just wait until someone's available that is. And then if you're a regular just person that needs to get treated and you just don't give a shit, that's okay. I don't want my taxes, because I still pay New York State tax, even though I live in Pennsylvania. I haven't done that whole change yet, but I still pay New York State. If they're serious about getting people from other countries to come to New York and start working, it's not cheap. So who's paying for that? Us. To work and live in New York City is not cheap. Who's paying for that? Us. So this is just a very expensive endeavor that is going to end up going into the pockets of someone, and we're on the hook for it.
Now, one thing,
they're all going to have to get flown here. It's not like they're going to get on a rowboat and come here like the people in Cuba.
No, I understand.
And then I'd like to know, are the people coming from those countries getting their vaccine, or are they coming to the country to get our vaccine? Is there a difference? I have to assume so.
Probably. There probably is. I know there's been a lot of hoarding in more impoverished countries of vaccines for the wealthy and the elite. So yeah, it's probably not as accessible to the common person as it is in a country like ours. But I also know we're not the model of that either. There was a fair amount of that going on here as well. And obviously our healthcare system is far from perfect. So I'm sure there's probably a little of both going on. But essentially, yeah, it's probably easier to get the vaccine here than it is in many other countries.
Now, hopefully all of them will be mandated to get it, and every booster shot that comes after, especially if my taxes are paying for it.
Well, see, mandated is tough, though, right? I mean, technically, our taxes pay for everybody. So if our taxes are paying for each other, then, mandated is tough. I wouldn't say that, because essentially then it's almost like an indentured servant type thing, where if you're going to mandate somebody gets the vaccine just because they come here, you're essentially saying that, like, however they were imported, the government now has control over them as people and they have no free will. I don't think that that's necessarily the answer.
And then I'd also like to know, are they going to be independent contractors, or are they going to be W-2 employees paying taxes? Because again, are they getting socials right away? How are they going to keep track of all the taxes that they pay? And if they're independent contractors getting a 1099, we have to rely on them paying the taxes on the income that they're getting at the hospitals too?
Well, all right. So let me ask you this first off. Where did you read that this is happening?
I read it about 2 weeks ago. It was like some sort of couple of articles that said that they were going to ship people in from, I think, Ireland and the Philippines or something.
Yeah, I saw one. I think the article I saw was on. where was it? It was a right-leaning site that I saw the article on. But the reason that I ask you that is because I haven't really seen too many people reporting this. And so I wonder if it's not deliberately, I'm sure there's probably a kernel of truth in there, but I wonder if this isn't being made out to be more of a red herring than it might actually be. Because I haven't.
It came up in discussion, maybe, and hopefully it gets shut down. But then the problem is there is going to be a shortage. And then what?
Well,
they're going to get other people from other states coming in, and now you have interstate travel. And then how does that all work with taxes yet again? I mean, there's got to be an incentive to get people from, we'll just say, traveling from Pennsylvania to go into New York City. There's going to be an incentive to get them to be into New York City. Is the government in New York State going to pay them a stipend on top of their regular salary? And then what? They get paid more than the other people because they're traveling from out of state?
Yeah, right. It does. It does get a little hairy when you think about it that way. Yeah,
it's a lose for New York State taxpayers. Is really what it is. They're not thinking about it. And this is political fucking jabber from her. So now this is going to put her as the first governor to come in and do something like this. So when she's campaigning for her next reelection, she can be like, I put my foot down during the pandemic, and it's, ooh, strong woman. Let's get her in for another term.
Ooh, yeah. Kathy Hochul, man, she's something else. Did you see over the weekend, she was at this mass and she was telling people that God wants you to get vaccinated?
I saw you put that, and it's just, okay. All right. There you go.
It's one of those things where it's just like why? Who did you think you're going to convince with that?
Who knows? I mean, I guess she's trying to cater to the people upstate New York that are more on the, the red side, the red voting stick.
Yeah. I like, it's funny too, because I was talking to some more conservative members of my family this past weekend, and they were saying to me, they're like, I never thought the day would come when I would miss Cuomo, but God damn it. These are people who not 6 months ago we're talking about how much they absolutely hated Cuomo, how Cuomo was the worst thing to ever happen to New York. And then here they are, what?
The thing with him is he just cared. Yeah, he just cared about his pockets, Cuomo. He's just the regular everyday political crook. This woman's trying to make herself stand out with some extreme stuff. She's like, New York is turning into like really extremist blue.
So, well, yeah. I mean, it's always been kind of trending in that direction, but now it's doing so in a kind of a militant way. Yeah, and as somebody who is pretty blue myself, I can't believe that it's getting as ridiculous as it is.
That's like perfect timing every single time,
Yeah, I know. God damn it!
It's like California.
Yeah. California has been that. Well, California's always kind of been like the model of that, and then New York tries to follow in California's footsteps, but they usually don't do as well doing that. Like California, legalized weed and everything else. And then what did New York do? New York was like, all right, fine, I guess you can use medicinally. Like, what? But one of the things I'm seeing here, so as far as Hochul goes in terms of getting healthcare professionals in other states or countries or whatever to practice in New York State, I guess the way they're doing that is the state declares a state of emergency. And I think when that happens, there might be federal funding that goes into place.
Oh, I see. Interesting. What the fuck? Hang on. This fucking dog won't shut up. Hang on. Sorry about that. So federal funding goes into place because you call in the National Guard and then you have a state of emergency. So it's basically, hey, we need help. So you're saying that what's going to end up happening is the federal government's going to foot the bill. So ultimately, it's a taxpayer problem across the country then.
Yeah. There's disaster relief funding that goes into place. And I believe at that point it's escalated to a federal thing. The state gets whatever allotment it requires because it's got a state of emergency going on. And at that point, I think it's handled. It's at least could be handled from a federal level. And the other thing I'm seeing that is interesting is that the people who are fired because of their refusal to get vaccinated are not eligible for unemployment.
Really?
Which seems kind of
Dude, there is going to be lawsuits. I'm telling you, there is going to be, and I don't even want to call it what are those shitty personal injury attorneys called again? Ambulance chaser attorney. There is going to be a good firm that takes on this case, and they're going to sue states. They're going to sue the federal government. Like, this is going to turn into a huge case. And again, guess who's fucked at the end of the day? Not the politicians who made these rules, but the taxpayers. Because when you sue a state and New York State has to pay, the taxpayers take care of the bill. Federal government doesn't pay, the taxpayers do. So I would think what they should do moving forward, when there's a class action suit against a state or the government, they should name political elected officials as defendants, and they should be on the hook personally. And if it's over a certain amount, there should be jail time. So if there is a case against the federal government for not allowing federal unemployment for all of these people, Joe Biden and anyone that supports this bill should be fined. And it should come out of their pay. They should be the ones that are sued.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones that are paying it. I mean, let me ask you a question. Do you think these people should be fired?
Do I think they should be fired? No.
What do you think is the middle ground for this? If it's only 20%, what's the middle ground?
The middle ground, I think, is not to have a state mandate that says that these people need to be fired. I think the better thing to do is leave it up to the businesses themselves.
But see, when we said last week, like these hospitals, these medical offices, they're paid primarily from Medicaid and Medicare. And if you have the federal government already saying that they're not going to pay unemployment, they can refuse to say, they can refuse to pay on those federal programs. And so then people can't go to a St. Luke's or a North Shore or any of these like medical offices for treatment. And then it takes away their business.
Right.
So the government
they shouldn't be allowed to do that. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. But also, it should be a type of thing where it's disclosed to the patient, like, hey, this is a facility where non-vax people can work. And then this is one that's not. Leave it up to the consumer to decide, and leave it up to the business to decide whether or not they want to take on that risk or not. But I mean, I don't know. It sets a very bad precedent when the government can just step in and en masse fire a bunch of people. That said, like, I understand the concern, being that it's the field of healthcare, and a lot of nurses are going to be dealing with people with compromised immune systems. So you have to take that into effect as well, or take that into account as well, I should say. So it's tough, right? Unfortunately, I don't think there is like a cut and dry answer, except to say something uncomfortable like, well, the businesses should be able to decide whether or not they want to put their patients at risk like that. And I mean, that sounds kind of shitty, but what's the alternative? The alternative is lots of people lose their jobs because they're unsure about a vaccine that is promoted not well. I mean, the promotion for the vaccine sucks. It just flat out sucks. And there's no amount of evidence that you're going to change somebody's mind if they have an inherent distrust of government and they have an inherent distrust of big pharma and the things that are presented to you. So like, I don't fault anybody for not getting it. I got it, and I think it's better to get it, but I don't think that not getting it is, should be punishable by swift termination.
Hang on 1 second before I reply to that, please.
Sure. Fucking motherfucker. Useless. Here we go. Oh, yeah. All right, sorry, I had to step away for a second myself.
No, good. You ready?
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying, and the federal government making a couple of these decisions sets a very dangerous precedent for veterans. Because I would like to think that there are still some veterans out there that do get the luxury of having the veteran healthcare system. And if you are setting this precedent of not giving unemployment benefits, at what point do all veterans that are no longer in the service, but they need the VA hospital because they are injured from war, until they say, oh, you can't go into the VA hospital and get treatment until you're vaccinated. And now you're forcing them to do it. Then what? If they don't get it done, the VA is not going to help them anymore?
Yeah, it's a good point. The other thing that I know is that there are a lot of people who are in the Army right now. The friends of mine that are still in the Army who aren't vaccinated, and they have their reasons. What ends up happening to them? Do they end up getting a discharge? Let's say it gets hypothetically to the point where their back is to the wall and they adamantly refuse to get the vaccine no matter what. So then what? Then do they get a discharge? If they get a discharge, is it an honorable discharge? Is it a general discharge? Is it a medical these things can ruin a person's life. If you get a dishonorable discharge, I mean that could ruin your life. That stays with you forever. That's that's kind of the equivalent of being a felon or something. It makes it very, very, very hard to find employment and things like that. So I worry about the implications of something like that too. But hopefully, I'd like to think that there's just not as shitty as it sounds. There's not enough cohesion in this country to sort of unify everything to this degree that it is in New York on a federal level. There's just not. I think there's too much.
Yeah. And what's going to end up happening again? Imagine if it is the what is it, dishonorable or unhonorable?
Dishonorable.
If it's a dishonorable discharge for something like that, like you said, it's almost like they're treated like a felon. They will sue, and guess who's on the hook for whatever lawsuit they have when they sue?
The taxpayer.
The taxpayer. Yep. So ultimately, at the end of the day, whether you're very, very pro-vaccine and think everybody should do it, first off, you're never, no matter what, even if it gets to a point where I get the vaccine, I'm like, you know what, I'm glad I got it. I'm very happy that I did this, and I recommend everybody getting it because blah, blah, blah. Do you realize there's still going to be people that don't get it? So no matter what, we're going to be in a society where there's people who aren't going to get it. There's going to always be the people who are like, I need to get every single booster. And we're going to have opposite views. But at the end of the day, with all of these things that the one side of all the pro-vaccination people are going for, they're going to be on the hook for any lawsuit because the state and the country, the U.S., will be named as a defendant in anything, and the taxpayer is going to be on the hook. So no matter what, it's a shoot. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And you know who's not going to give a shit? All the politicians that were involved in these mandates. You know why? Because they're just going to be like, oh, well, they're suing the state. They're suing the U.S. It's not like we're on the hook.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to come out of their pockets. But the other thing I think is interesting, you bring up boosters. I remember I was talking with someone today, and they were talking about how, I was talking with Mike, actually, Mike Pistone, who was previously on the show. He has a friend, or he has a couple friends in, it's like a Northern European country. I forget exactly where. I think he said Iceland. Regardless, in this country, I guess they lifted all the mask mandates and everything else. Like they're going about business as usual. They're 100% returned to normal. And I think that's a little alarming because, you've got these variants supposedly, which are going to, necessitate booster shots in, here in this country. So it's like, where does that end? Are they going to go back to normal until there's another variant and then they're going to mask up again? It's like that almost seems reactive. That doesn't seem like they're really planning for anything, but that said, I don't know what the narrative is outside of this country, admittedly, because I'm in this country. So I'm subject to whatever it is whatever news you're supposed to be getting.
Dude, I'd really, at the end of the day, I think, and as crazy as I am, which I know you think I am sometimes, with some of my conspiracies that I think of. But I think COVID was one of those things that was supposed to get Donald Trump not to get reelected. It fucking worked. And then the media ate it up and caused a fucking pandemic.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you that it was politicized. I think it was bound to be politicized anyway. And people don't really give the Democrats enough credit. You know, people talk about how strategic their Republicans are and how good they are at sort of banding together and unifying over a cause. And you know, I think that the Democrats are also pretty good at that, and they really showed how good they were at it with this thing in making everything, you know, something bad against Trump. You know, it's funny because you actually have Donald Trump to thank for the expediting the process of making the vaccines, and then ironically, a year later, here we have all the people who were MAGA 2020 now saying that the vaccines are bad. You know, and that's what I'm saying is, like, at this point, it's gone so far off the rails that there is, like, to try and follow it back to its origins, like, it's impossible to follow. It's gone so nuts. And I'm sure it's not just this country, but man, in this country, it's gone crazy. And all that said, I don't think that it's not something that people should be concerned about. I do think COVID is a legitimate concern. But
I agree. Listen, it's not like COVID's fake. Okay. And the flu is a legitimate concern as well. And the flu is not fake. I just opt not to get the flu shot. I don't get the flu shot. I've never gotten the flu shot. If I get the flu, I'm going to feel like shit for 48 to 36 hours. And then I'm going to get better. I mean, then I have a chance of getting pneumonia after the flu. Like, and pneumonia could kill me. Like, I get it, but it's a risk I'm willing to take.
I think it's a false equivalency to try and put the two together. And I understand where you're coming from because symptomatically they're sort of the same, but the coronavirus is different in that the likelihood of there's no demographic where it's more likely to develop lasting problems, you know, you know, obviously with old people or people with compromised immune systems, yes, but they're unfortunately the demographic that there's always most likely to be problems in with any disease. But as far as COVID goes, it is statistically harder to track than it is the flu because it can kill people who otherwise were seemingly healthy.
But see, right now they're calling it a booster shot, okay? Until you're told you need to get a COVID shot every year, just like the flu shot. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers of the flu shot. I don't know if over the years it's declined or increased, but if it's declined, they clearly needed something else to replace the flu shot. So if you're going to have to get a COVID shot every fucking year, are you going to do it?
Who is they?
What was my sentence?
You said they needed something to replace the flu shot.
Pharmaceutical companies, fucking Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, the other asshole. I don't know what it is.
AstraZeneca?
Yeah, sure.
I think, yeah.
They needed something to replace the flu shot.
So you think COVID was blown out of proportion because flu shot numbers were down?
Sure. And if they are, I mean, let me ask you, do you get the flu shot or no?
Well, see, that's the thing, right? I get the flu shot if I remember to get it, if it's convenient for me to get it, but normally it's not.
Convenient?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I just never seem to have time for it. And I've gotten the flu before and it sucks. And I remember after I got the flu and I got better, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to get the flu shot. And then the next year came and went and I was like, well, it's too late now. Yeah. So it is one of the, So typically I don't get the flu shot.
If COVID is a shot that's going to be yearly, are you going to get it yearly? And what if the government mandates everyone get a flu shot or a COVID shot yearly? You need to get your yearly booster.
Well, I mean, if they mandate it, then I don't really have a choice, do I? Unless I want to leave the country. And as far as things I would be willing to leave the country over, that's relatively low on the list.
But imagine it's a yearly requirement, and then every year you have a risk of them turning around saying, numbers were higher this year. Therefore, if you don't get your shot, you're going to get fired.
Well, obviously, there's going to be a point where
it gives a cause for firing.
Absurd.
I mean, again, precedent. It gives a cause for firing now. So if you don't fucking like someone because of the way they look at you and they're in a union and you don't like them, well, guess what? They're not vaccinated. So goodbye.
Well, ironically, I think the funny part is if more places were unionized, this would be a harder battle to fight, because if healthcare workers were unionized, I think the union, as begrudgingly as it might have to do it, the union would have to go to bat for these people.
Are you not allowed to have unions in healthcare?
I don't know if you're not allowed, but I know, like, there's no I don't think there's a healthcare workers union in the way that there's like, say, a teachers union or something like that.
So imagine if this because unions are pretty democratic, I would think they're more blue leaning than they are red. So
Yes.
wouldn't it be fucking nuts if the end game here is to create a healthcare union?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if, given that this is a pretty bold move, I wouldn't be surprised if the equal but opposite force in the other direction wasn't quite as bold as making a union.
New York State, first state to incorporate a state union for healthcare workers. Now that bitch is getting reelected.
Oh boy. Yeah, think about that. Jesus Christ. That'd be wild. Although I'd like to think that if there were a union that were coming about and doing that, they would appropriately vilify her for having cost so many people their jobs. But that said, it's hard for me because I don't really see a winner in the situation either way. Because on one hand, like, you shouldn't, like, I don't know. I don't feel like it needs to be promoted as much for people to not get vaccinated. But also, like, yeah, I do think ultimately everybody has a right to bodily autonomy, and some would argue, not getting vaccinated is you're taking, bodily autonomy away from somebody else. But you could just as easily make that argument and say, oh, well, you getting an abortion takes bodily autonomy away from another person. And it's like, and I don't agree with any of those things, but if I have to support one or the other, I'm going to go with, you got a right to say what you do and don't put in your body. And you shouldn't be able to be fired over that. Although I suppose there is kind of an argument, I guess, if you're talking about like drugs, for example, right? You can get fired if you fail a drug test, and a job can drug test you without prior notice. So maybe that's a way to look at it,
I guess. But I mean, if drugs are illegal, and I think it becomes an issue with drugs because of it messes up your orientation, right?
Well, okay, I get what you're saying. But in a lot of places, even where like weed is legal, they can test you for that. And if you test positive for weed, a lot of it has to do, I think, with insurance regulations. Maybe that is what's going on here. Maybe behind all this is the insurance companies.
It could be the insurance companies, but why would the government be the one that's mandating it? If it's the insurance companies, it'd be more than just New York State. It would be
but think about it. I mean,
nationwide.
All the insurance companies. But think about it. All the insurance companies have their headquarters. Well, a lot of them have their headquarters located in New York City.
So then this would almost be a push then for them to leave New York City, ultimately screwing over the New York taxpayer even more.
Maybe, but I
don't know.
I think what it more boils down to is that the insurance companies probably have lobbyists who are near and dear to the heart of the governor's office in New York State. I wonder if they don't have a little more pull, given that their headquarters are based here, and they could threaten to leave and cost the state money. It's something to think about, I guess. It's an interesting theory I just came up with.
No, dude, you might be right. I mean, but again, at least if they sue the insurance companies, it's not on the taxpayer unless they get bailed out.
Yeah. Speaking of bailouts, we can come back to this in a second, but speaking of bailouts, have you heard about this company Evergrande in China?
I read one article about it. Elaborate.
So I think this is going to be a little more, I'm either totally wrong and this is not going to affect the American economy in any way, or this is going to be way more disastrous than is being talked about right now. But as of today, this company Evergrande owns a third of the real estate in China. And they were like basically insolvent by this time, right? By the time that this has been coming out, by the time this episode airs, they will have either been declared totally insolvent and in default, or if they made their payment on the 29th, then they'll have like another 30 days to make. They had to make a $34 million payment today, some number like that on their, they had to make like a $34 million interest payment or something on their debt. And if they didn't make that as of the 29th, then they will have been declared insolvent, and it's going to cause a massive shockwave in the Chinese economy. I mean, you figure they own a third of the real estate in China. That's massive. That's huge. They're going to be the Chinese equivalent of Bear Stearns. And if they go down, it's going to take a huge toll on the Chinese economy, and anybody who has any exposure to that is going to really be in rough shape. And I don't think it's impossible that the shockwaves of that ripple over into the American economy, and it makes for a very disastrous situation.
Now, couldn't it also benefit us a little bit?
I mean,
to see a little bit of a collapse in China. I know, like, we're all like, ooh, wishing a collapse on anything is bad, but wouldn't a Chinese collapse be like good?
Well, you see, again, I don't think either I'm totally wrong or I'm either I'm wrong or I'm not. But essentially, so China owns a lot of our debt, and if this all goes down, then yeah, theoretically, then is some of our debt forgiven because this whole the Chinese economy implodes? Probably not. But that said, the Chinese government is going to ultimately be forced to do one of two things. They're either going to bail them out, and then it sets a precedent of, oh, well, now we bail out businesses that are failing, which is a precedent that is heretofore unestablished in China. And I don't think the Chinese government wants to establish that precedent. Or they let this thing go down and they let it absolutely tank their economy for a while, in which case I don't know what that means for the U.S. economy in terms of, does it mean that China stops exporting things? Does it mean that we take the tariffs off of Chinese goods and maybe it benefits us to consume? Like, it's hard to say at this point.
Either way, it seems like it's something negative for China. And if we have a good president in office, he will take advantage of it. I feel Mr. Biden, and part of my language, ladies, I think Joe Biden is and I don't think he's going to hit them in the gut while they're down.
Well, I think more than likely what's going to happen is you're going to see just how many American companies are invested in China. And I think that's where the real shockwave is going to come through, is that a lot of these companies have exposure to the Chinese economy.
Let them hurt them.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that their hurting is what's going to ripple down to us as just the individual. I think that's,
but it's going to force them to move quick. Those companies are going to have to make a quick decision, and it will ripple here a little bit. But then those companies are going to either have to figure something out as soon as possible, or the American consumer is going to move on, because there's basically no loyalty when it comes to American consumerism in price. So they'll just move on to the next one. So if that company doesn't get their shit straight, they'll move on somewhere else. And it's an opportunity for other businesses that already have their shit straight together to start getting more of the market share.
What if this is all a catalyst for China to start taking some direct military action, though, in an effort to well,
then hopefully
Joe Biden buy some war bonds or something.
And hopefully Joe Biden is on our president at the time that happens.
He just immediately is like, China did what? Okay, Carl, you take over.
I don't know where I am. I need to resign.
I'm going to go play with my damn leg hair in the pool.
That's going to be an interesting thing. And I believe that'll be another topic for us to have in the coming weeks of real estate, because rates have gone up like a lot the last 4 days. Thursday and Friday last week, they shot up. Monday and Tuesday, they shot up. And then today, there was a little bit of just like no changes. Because, the Fed's already said that the rates are going to like slowly start going up. But then the last 4 days, not including today, it's like they went up half a point.
Well, that's probably why.
Crazy. Because they don't know what to do. Honestly, if we weren't already like at all-time lows, if we were like last summer, I said last summer, like we should have been up in the 4s and this summer should have been the 5s. Mm-hmm. This would have been a point where 5s went back to 4s or the 4s went back to 3s. This would have been a turning point, I believe, where it's such negative news that could potentially, it would lower rates. But because we're already so low, it's doing the reverse effect. And if it's doing the reverse effect, that means the economy is going to turn around here for the better. Because normally when rates go up, the economy is performing a little bit better. And when rates go down is when the economy is performing worse. So this could just be America preparing for a nice little jab in the gut to China. And this could mean that some of these businesses do move out of China. My dogs agree.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I know our conversation here kind of ate up most of our time. I know you had something else you wanted to bring up today, so I'm going to let you take the floor.
Oh, yeah. So, in staying out of all the dire news that's going on here, that kind of like you said, it ate up most of the time here. I do think there was one thing worth looking at, just is an example of two shitty people being shitty, and that is that Wednesday in Miami, Drake was hanging out with our podcast's favorite person of all. Who is that, Chris?
Jordan Buckford.
Yes, the Wolf of Wall Street himself, hanging out with Drake to celebrate the release of, I guess, Drake's album, which sucked. So I guess it makes sense, Jordan Belfort's a shitty businessman. Drake just put out a shitty album. Why not hang out together?
I don't understand. I didn't even know that he was in that community of elite, performers. It's a real shame that he's being shame on Drake. I never really liked Drake, but he's even now more of a terrible person to even speak with him. Again, he's, Jordan Belfort's a thief, and he's associating himself with him. Drake doesn't need to learn how to bullshit people with sales. Okay. So why is he even hanging out with him? Unless Jordan Belfort paid him money to have dinner with him or something. I'd like to think Jordan Belfort gave him $1 million cash in a suitcase, because if Jordan Belfort has $1 million in his bank account, he's a real prick for not paying back the people he stole money from. But I'd like to think he paid Drake for that photo shoot. I'd like to think Jordan Belfort is like every rapper who's hung out with the Kardashians and just paid for the exposure.
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely possible he could have paid for that kind of opportunity. But I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, you say Drake doesn't need to bullshit people with his sales. Clearly not, because he made an album of bullshit and it sold.
Yeah, which one?
Yeah. It's hard to narrow him down at this point. Jesus Christ. Pretty much everything since, if you're reading this, it's too late, has been just declining in quality. But this album truly sucked, man. And it was supposed to be up against Kanye's Donda, and dude, Donda was like head and shoulders, and Donda was nothing super special either. I mean, it was just kind of Kanye by the numbers, but I thought Donda was head and shoulders above this album. And the fact that the two of them had a beef about it, I'm sure that was all a publicity stunt too, but at least come with Kanye's probably going to put out something decent if it took him this long to make the album. So you'd like to think that Drake would have come with something a little better.
But I mean, thank God Kanye went with the Kardashian and not Belfort.
Oh God. Jesus. Yeah, that would have been bad.
I don't know. I'm disgusted. I am just disgusted.
Now, what do you think is worse? Drake hanging out with Jordan Belfort, or Kanye hanging out with Trump?
You know the answer to that.
Yeah, no, I know.
At least Kanye tried to do a presidential run into that. I mean, do we think that Drake is actually going to get into the, oh my God, imagine Drake gets into the fucking world of, y'all can make money. Just pay me and I will show you the way how to sell and make millions. You can rap just like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Drake, when Drake is trying to give a comforting message, he uses his singing voice, but then when he's debating someone, he uses his rap voice.
It's one of those things where I just think that at least Kanye, when he was with Trump, he had motivation behind it to, I'm going to run for president. And look, he got all this publicity and he did run for president. So you can't fault him. I mean, you can't fault him for that. And he hung out with Trump probably just to get a Trump voter or two. If I were Kanye, I'd hang out with Trump over Clinton.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just very random. Why that asshole? At least have dinner with that Tony Robbins guy or a Grant Cardone. Don't go with this prick.
Yeah, even Grant Cardone makes me sick. But But yeah, pretty much any one of those gurus is better than Jordan Belfort.
Yeah, he wouldn't be having dinner with Grant Cardone. He'd be having a protein shake.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Grant Cardone. I haven't eaten since 2013.
I haven't eaten solid food since 2013. I blend everything up. I drink it.
Yeah, if I can't drink it, it does not exist to me. But yeah, again, I think the reason he hung out with Jordan Belfort is obviously he's got no taste. So
I think Jordan Belfort paid him. I'd like to think Jordan Belfort paid Drake money to get a little publicity because maybe he's getting, going broke again. And this is his only way to maybe get a different crowd of people to pay to for his bullshit. To me, why take a photo of him and that asshole? And I hate that they don't even call him Jordan Belfort. They call him the Wolf of Wall Street.
According to the article that I saw this in, the two and where did I see this? Page6.com. And there's a picture of them. They affectionately referred to themselves as the werewolves of Miami.
God, honestly, if they were broke, I feel like people would laugh at them.
Oh yeah, dude.
That's all it is. They were the epitome of a fucking joke, but because they have money, people salivate over them.
What do you think the two of them talked about? You think when Drake went over to the table, do you think Jordan Belfort was like, "Oh, hi there, Aubrey"?
Honestly, he probably said, "Listen, my album sucked. Can you help me sell a better album?" And he's like, "Listen, talk to iTunes and see if there's a way to scam them into putting their credit card information for 99 cents for the whole album, but it's actually just one song." And it just charges them 12 times.
Yeah, see if there's a way where it can automatically distribute your album like it did with the U2 album, except also charge everybody. That'd be pretty smart, actually.
Yeah, it would
I wonder how much money it would actually take to bribe iTunes to do that.
Yeah, not that much, because I don't really think anybody uses iTunes anymore. They're like, all right, give us 25% and we're good.
Yeah.
It's like that. We'll call it a glitch and people can call their credit card companies and put in a dispute.
It's like that Dr. Evil scene, except it's Tim Cook and he's like, $1 million. And they're like, that's it? That's all it takes? Yeah, why you got it?
Who do you think would play Drake and Jordan Belfort in like a comedy friend movie? Two unlikely friends.
Jordan Belfort, I gotta say, probably Sebastian Maniscalco.
Who the fuck is that?
You don't know? He was in The Irishman. He was the guy in he's a stand-up comedian. He's funny. He was the guy in The Irishman who was the loose cannon guy that they shoot in the restaurant.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He actually, yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And then who would you have as Drake?
As Drake, that's a tough one.
Would you go Will Smith?
I wouldn't go Will Smith.
Would you go his son?
Yes. Jaden Smith.
Sebastian Maniscalco and Jaden Smith in Drake Meets the Wolf.
Yeah,
rated
PG-13
for brief, strong language. That's it.
I love that people were making fun of Drake too for that album. When one of the teaser tracks, he says the line, "Girl, you say you a lesbian? Yeah, me too." And it's like everyone was like, "Oh wow, that's the coolest line that I ever heard when I was 13 years old."
Very, very sad that you sent that to me. I'm like, that really sucks. So there goes his free publicity, or hopefully he paid $1 million for it, and no one actually goes with Jordan Belfort. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to go on LinkedIn and there'll probably be like a bunch of things now with, ooh, me and Drake.
Oh, yeah. God. Me and the champagne poppy. God, I hate it so much.
I know. I'm going to just have to go on his page real quick just to see what's on there. Jordan. Let's see. Did he post anything about Drake yet? Wow, I'm surprised. He has not done anything with Drake on his activity feed yet.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, he just looks like he put too much coke in his eye. Anyway, listeners, we are hitting our time here. Thank you for listening. It's another Sunday, another week.
It is another Sunday. It is another week. And it is another time to just remember the box when you're seeing your family, especially for the holidays coming up. There are going to be topics coming up that, maybe are better left alone. And I think it's important to establish those kind of boundaries so that you can have healthy relationships with your families. So if you haven't listened to the box yet, I say definitely make sure you check out the box parts 1 and 2.
Listen up, everyone. That is right. And also, happy birthday weekend, Tommy.
Thanks, buddy.
He probably thought I forgot.
No, I was hoping you did, though. I almost forgot.
And listeners, don't forget about Tommy's spinoff. Don't worry, we can take that out.
Okay, good.
You fucking prick. All right, listeners, have a great weekend. Wish Tommy a happy birthday. Shoot him an email, shoot him a text, do what you got to do. He's going to be 32. He's only got about 5 years left in him. So let's hope for the best.
Let's try and make them good.
Make them good for him. We will see you next week with another great episode that we wanted to do today, but I accidentally messed up the firing and made that this week. So next week, stay tuned for another great podcast with Chris and Tom.
Have a good week.
Have a good week.